engaging with your schools and for looking at and exploring how you can work with your schools in their climate action and how that can support you in their work. And hopefully that what I'm going to share with you today in the Let's Go Zero campaign can help you do that more. So as Emma said, I work for Ashden, but Let's Go Zero is brought to you by lots of different organisations. So we lead on the project management side of it, but there's a whole coalition of organisations that are working together to create this campaign and to make it as impactful as it can be. And I'll share that group of organisations in a minute in one of my slides. Let's Go Zero is a campaign to help schools to be that force for change, to be part of the solution, and to allow them to stand with their students to be able to take action. So we've seen a really big increase over the last year and a half, 2 years, in the enthusiasm and ability with schools. They really want to be doing something. They need to be seen to be taking action, not just to cut their costs. There's an obvious one that's always been there, but now there is a society pressure. They are very much being asked to do something by their students, but also there's a marketing side of it that we're seeing that schools have never quite been able to identify a name before, but they can see that there's an expectation that they should be doing something and taking action as well. So the campaign comes to meet that need, to quantify that demand, and to give that wider voice of schools. And so just to explain, when we say schools, that's any school across the UK educating age 4 to 18, or to be honest, any organisation or setup that considers themselves to be a school. So anywhere where they're educational establishments. So it's anyone who's educating children, and it's both local authority schools, academy schools, and independent schools, as well as any educational facilities. We don't do the universities. We work very closely with the people that are doing a very similar thing with universities, but this is just schools. And why schools? Why do we work with schools to get them to do this? What's our reason behind working with schools? We could go and work with manufacturing or shipping industry or someone like that. Why do we work with schools? It's because their reach is so significant. So there are 10 million people on average going into schools today. That's the students and the staff and all the people that are there engaging with schools today. That's an audience of 10 million people across the UK. There's 32,000 schools across the UK. So this is a really big audience. And according to ONS stats, 42% of households across the UK have school age or younger children. And I think actually for London, it's closer to about 50%. So that's 50% of your households in your council areas have got kids in them, school kids in them. So you have that reach, that ability to talk to a group through their school, and then it reaches out into the community. There's some interesting work that's been done actually in the States that shows that communities that are harder to reach to start off with, so they're less active in terms of climate action, that the impact of working with the students to then communicate it out to parents that's where it has the most significant impact. And actually, interestingly, it's girls. So students that are girls, they tend to have a greater impact in influencing their families and communities than boys. So as a mum of 3 boys, that's quite an interesting stat for me. But there is this amazing reach that you can, through all sectors of society, whatever economic or cultural groups that you have within your community, they all send their kids to school, and you have that way into all of those households and families. That's something that, where, as Carl mentioned earlier, we want to have that be overwhelmed by that noise of action. So this is a way that we can do that. And when we talk about the role of schools, there is both an ability for schools to cut their impact now, so to be taking action in their site and their activities now, so having that immediate impact. There's the opportunity for them to influence their communities and households to cut their immediate impact now as well. But then there's also that longer term aim, so to to create those better decision makers, people who make better decisions than we've been doing in the past. But also, as we get past those quick wins in society, and in 10, 15, 20 years time, and we are asking our communities to make more challenging choices, to have those bigger, more strategic lifestyle changes, that's when we need that audience of our young people now and the future. They need to understand and see that benefit of change. So that's why schools are a really significant way to go forward. So we are working with, so any school across the UK can sign up, and when they sign up to Let's Go Zero, what they're doing is they're saying three things. They're saying they want to be zero carbon by 2030. They want to, that they're taking action now, and that they want more help to do that. So I'll break that down a little bit. So they want to be zero carbon by 2030. That is about deliberately being ahead of the game, knowing that that's ahead of where they're required to be, ahead of the targets that are being put to them by Department for Education. It's about saying we want to be a sector that leads community change, and we're seeing that real response that schools really embrace that idea that they become those community leaders. So they're taking action now. That can be in all kinds of different formats. So those of you, when you completed the survey, those of you might be working with them on their travel or their food or engagement, or on their buildings. Some of them are on quite an early stage of that journey to zero carbon, and some have got all the bells and whistles and the eco bling on everything. But we want them to be doing what they can do that's in their remit now, and so they're taking their action. And then that third thing, which is about asking for more help. So what we're doing is we're putting together a set of policy asks that will be taken to national government to say, right, schools really want to do something. How can we, government, how can everybody work together? How can we make this an achievable goal for schools? And when we say zero carbon, just to be clear, yes, the term we're generally using is net zero around communities, but this, we say zero carbon for two reasons. One is it's simplified it. We're dealing with non-experts, so we're dealing with teachers and school leaders who are experts in something else. So it's simplifying it to say zero, but also we want to have a really clear message that offsetting isn't the way to start. So there's a clear route that you need to minimise all your impact before you start exploring offsetting. So here's a slide that just shows you a little bit more about the different organisations that are working with us, that are all coming together, and all the different areas that we consider to be part of that school impact. So a lot of the perceived impact is about energy use on site, but really we have to go beyond that. So we really need to be looking at energy use on site. Yes, that is important, but procurement, food, water, travel, waste, and then within the school grounds as well. And across and within all of those, curriculum and teaching. How are we using the buildings that our school buildings, not just learning in them, and how are we really looking at that, educating that to children to be empowered and to have that engagement to take action. So we've seen that through the data that exists, and there is very little data that shows the carbon impact of schools to any good detail, but what we do have shows that sometimes procurement can be 40% of a school's carbon impact, whereas the energy use in their buildings is sometimes maybe only 20%. So we need to be looking at these different areas and how both they can be seen as challenges but opportunities to look at cutting the carbon impact and making the different savings. We're working with lots and lots of organisations, and that's where organisations like local authorities come in. We can't go and talk to all the schools about this, but we want all the organisations that are working with schools to be talking to them about this. And we're already working with Church of England. They're now actively encouraging all their schools to sign up to Let's Go Zero. We're working with the National Education Union. And I think at the last count, we've got about 27 different local authorities of various sizes and shapes around the UK who are supporting Let's Go Zero and encouraging their schools to sign up. So that wealth and movement for change is really coming together now. And we're hoping that through that multi-pronged attack that schools are hearing about Let's Go Zero through their students, the parents groups, through their church, their faith groups, through all their local authorities, as well as through sort of mass media and social change. There's a wider picture about how this fits into the road to COP and policy asks, and I'm not going to go into lots of detail about this now, but there is some work that's coming together now. There will be a COP pack for schools, so schools can engage with that COP event and how it works, and then they could be putting their pledges together to take their pledges to the leaders at COP to say, this is what we're doing, how are you going to help us? But that's a whole other presentation in itself. So anyone who wants to know any more about that, do please get in touch. But we are really hoping that you can support the work that we're doing and to help tell the stories as well of what schools are doing. Those of you who work with schools already will know that they're quite risk averse. They'll do it if the school down the road is doing it. So we need as many stories of change and what's happening and what everyone is doing to really normalise and make this very mainstream, the way that schools are behaving and the way that schools are leading on this. So there's some details here for you, but please do get in touch, and there'll be a whole load of different things that I'll send out through Emma after this session, one of which is our comms pack for local authorities, and that has all of the different text and images and materials and social media assets that you could need to share Let's Go Zero with your schools. And really happy to take questions, which I think are coming up later. I'll pass you back to Emma now.